Welcome to Dare to Be Seen, brought to you by Alyssa Vulpes Productions and EDN Publishing. Join our host, Alyssa DiNapoli, aka Alyssa Vulpes, author, artist coach, hypnotherapist, singer-songwriter, and drummer, as she engages in down-to-earth, insightful, and inspiring conversations with female indie singer-songwriters around a virtual campfire. We shall discuss the lessons, songs, and personal stories of women who dare to be seen, scratching beneath the surface to give you an insider look into what makes their chosen career sometimes challenging and yet always inescapably compelling. So let's get the show started.
Welcome to another episode of Dare to Be Seen. I'm your host, Elisa Di Napoli, aka Elisa Vulpes, and today's episode features Sarah Irvine. And let me tell you something about Sarah. She was born under the southern star side of the Milky Way with a passion for climbing trees and weaving long-winded stories. Sarah's delicate and tender vocals breeze their way straight through the open window and into your heart. This one-time circus acrobat, now wandering musician, has a sensitive songwriting style that invites you to share in musings of friendship and folk tales set against the backdrop of more than half a decade consumed by northern wanderlust. Sarah is one half of the duo Weird Cousins. Before we meet our guest for today, I would like to invite you to go to tinyurl.com/podfreebies and you will be able to download for free my essential vocal warm-up so you can perform with authentic confidence while keeping your voice safe and healthy. And now, here's our guest for today.
Midnight December, it all becomes clear.
The thing that I love about music is the way that you can connect with other people and you can tell stories and you can have a shared experience through a melody or a set of lines put together to a tune that make you feel something.
Like children we lay.
I think that what I'm really enjoying just now in terms of writing songs is the creative process, for myself really, rather than kind of thinking about an audience. It's maybe like a form of meditation or being really present, because when you're creating you are like making something and you're really in the moment.
What brought you to this side of the world from sunny Australia?
Yeah, sometimes I kind of wonder as well. But I guess the way it happened was that I was in my mid-20s and sort of a little bit lost, I guess. I just sort of decided to go traveling and take a break and just go out and see some places that I really wanted to see. So I ended up going to South America and up to North America and across to Iceland, and then came to the UK. And I had this pen pal who lived in England, and I came to stay with her. And I was just sort of hanging about in England, not really knowing what I was going to do. And one of my pals from Australia said, "You should go to Edinburgh. I think you'd really like it there." And this was about kind of Christmas time. So I sort of hop off a train and arrive in Edinburgh, and there's kind of fairy lights everywhere and this like Christmas market and just a general sort of, I don't know, like feeling of magic and wonder. And I instantly just felt like really at home here. And I then just ended up kind of living here for a year, and then I went back to Australia for a while, but I guess maybe, it was still something in my mind in a place that I still wanted to be. So I ended up coming back, and I've lived here for almost about 5 years now. So it's been a little bit of time, but yeah, it was never a sort of planned thing. I just kind of arrived on a whim and then really felt at home here. So ended up staying.
Wow. So have you been quite immersed in the folk scene? Have you?
Yeah, definitely. I think Edinburgh has a really nice, like, it's quite a small place. I sort of feel Edinburgh's a bit of a village. Generally, you always meet someone who knows somebody who you know or has some sort of connection in some way. So I think Edinburgh definitely has a music community that's very small and vibrant and just full of really genuinely like really nice people. So I've really enjoyed it. I never actually played music in front of people for so many years, and I think Edinburgh was kind of the place I came to, and that just became something that I did. So it's still a kind of community that I'm meeting people within and kind of finding my feet in as well. But yeah, it's definitely a lovely place to play music.
Right, and so you've been playing for a while now, but has this love of music been a recent thing, or is it something that's always been in your life?
I would say it's always been in my life. I think it was probably just something that was a bit quieter for me for quite a lot of my teenage years and like early 20s. My grandparents were very musical people. They yeah, they were just my favorite people, really. I really they were such a strong like presence in my life growing up, and my grandmother Flo, she played the piano, and my granddad Stan, he played the harmonica, and they were in a concert band together and a union choir. So they'd always be kind of doing these concerts and singing a lot of union songs, and also putting on these kind of plays and performances and variety shows and things like that. So there was always a lot of kind of performance around. My own parents are not, I mean, they love music, but they never really like played anything. So it was more the influence of my dad's mum and dad. My grandmother really, she had such a strong desire for one of the grandchildren to like play piano.
Right.
And I have all of these older cousins who are all boys. And so she went through them all like one at a time, trying to teach them piano, and all of them gave it up. And so by the time it came to me, I think she'd sort of lost a little bit of energy for it. But I was definitely really keen. I would go around to her house after school when I was a teenager, and she would kind of teach me different tunes just by ear on piano. So I learned a lot of like Beethoven songs that she really liked, and some songs from musicals and things like that. She was really into honky-tonk music, a lot of music from like the 30s and 40s as well.
Right. So did you teach yourself music with her help? Is that what happened?
I'd say that kind of is how I've come to music. I definitely always sang, and I sang a lot as a child. I think my parents put me into some sort of singing group. I have this strong memory of singing, being the one chosen to sing a solo at this big performance when I was 5 years old, and we sang that song by it's by USA for Africa, the one that they made,
Right.
the charity song, We Are the World.
Oh yes.
So I had this really high solo when I was 5 years old, and it was like a really big moment. My year one teacher came to see me perform and stuff like that. So I was always sort of singing, but I just had so many other interests that music sort of, it fell to the wayside for quite a lot of my life. And then I guess coming to Edinburgh and kind of just finding my voice again, and I guess, yeah, just learning some things and meeting some people who were of a similar sort of mind and attitude really inspired me to kind of just give it a go and start playing more.
And that when you started writing your own songs, or was it something that you were doing even before that?
I mean, seriously, probably only started writing songs, I guess, in the last maybe 5 years, 6 years. But I do have memories of like writing really terrible songs as a teenager that kind of like went along with a lot of angsty poetry. And I wrote a lot of songs about peace and like I just, yeah, like political songs, but I don't think that they weren't, I don't have a memory of what they sounded like.
So would you say your music now does it revolve around a specific topic that you're particularly passionate about, or is there a message in your music, or not really?
I guess a lot of the things that I've written, I would say, are based on kind of experiences that I've had, and the music that I like to play is kind of about stories. And I guess the thing that I love about music is the way that you can connect with other people and you can tell stories and you can have a shared experience through a melody or a set of lines put together to a tune that make you feel something. So I guess in terms of a message, I don't really ever set out with a particular goal. It kind of is just something ephemeral sometimes that happens, or something that I'm expressing. And I guess that there are messages in it, but it's not something that I'm necessarily like thinking of
Right.
particularly. It's more related to experience, and I guess kind of trying a way to form that experience into something that other people could relate to in a way that might be meaningful for them.
Okay. Would you say that you write more for yourself or for other people? So in other words, if there was no audience, would you still write songs, or is it essential for you to have an audience?
I'm definitely like don't have an audience at the moment, really. So for a lot of lockdown, I didn't actually feel like playing music, which is fine. I think it's a sort of strange time to be a musician, to also just to be creative and to feel inspired. But I've started doing a little bit more sort of being a bit more like disciplined about writing and actually setting time aside to be creative. So actually in August, I've been trying to write a song every day, which has been a really interesting experience because it also started at the exact same time that I started working again for the first time in like 6 months. So it was a little bit difficult to be writing a song and also like working in a different job. But I think that what I'm really enjoying just now in terms of writing songs is the creative process, like for myself, really, rather than kind of thinking about an audience or who's going to listen to the song. I'm sort of really becoming aware of myself, I guess, as a creative person, and the way that creativity is a really important like form of expression just in terms of process. So I'm really just enjoying the process of sitting down and writing a song and not really knowing what it's going to be, but also not setting any expectations for myself in terms of what it's going to be as well, and just enjoying the kind of process of that.
Right. So it's more like a surprise every time. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise. I think sometimes you can be feeling a certain way and like want to write about that and have maybe a purpose that you feel for it. But I definitely am more just kind of being disciplined about setting aside time to be creative and to just do it as a process and not think about it in terms of producing anything or there being an end product. Just
yes.
enjoying the kind of just being creative. I guess it's maybe like a form of meditation, or like, I guess, being really present, because when you're creating, you are like making something and you're really in the moment. So it's quite a like beautiful, and also, I guess, just like a healthy thing I feel for my own sort of sanity to be doing.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because sometimes when I try to write a song, or even if I I play the drums as well, and sometimes if I think that there is an outcome, or I have to learn a particular riff, or I need to come up with something specific, it can actually hinder my creative process, because then I get hung up on the result. and I'm not enjoying the actual process anymore, you know. So I think, yeah, it's really important to play, meaning, you know, like a kid plays without thinking about what's the result of this playing, you know.
I definitely think of it in terms of kind of children as well. My sort of second, I guess, profession in a way is I've worked a lot in education, been doing a lot of work in like forest schools and just, I guess, play-based education, and I guess that's the thing that I guess a lot of educators and people who do research into the way that children develop, and what's important, I guess, for us is we do like live in a world that is very kind of product based, or where we create these kind of internal images of what we think we should be making or what somebody else says is good, rather
Yeah.
than just participating in the kind of process of being, and that in itself is actually a really valid and valuable thing to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And also specifically in this time when then it all comes back to the artist herself, you know, and the music itself, and art for art's sake, you know.
It's I think maybe a really important thing to kind of come back to. I think if you're playing a lot of shows or gigging a lot, and just on that sort of cycle of going around and doing those sorts of things, it can kind of make you forget, or like you spend a lot of time preparing for those moments instead of just sitting and just being creative, I guess, and just in the art form.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, talking about the campfire, that's one of my favorite moments is when, you know, we're all sitting around. Maybe I'm a bit of a hippie, you know, but sitting around the campfire and just singing a song, and it doesn't matter, you know, it's not because I want the applause, it's not because anyone is listening, but it is about the connection, and it is about being. And yeah, I think it's important to just step away sometimes from this idea of having to have you know, a product, something to sell.
I guess society has become this kind of really product-based sort of place to be, where everything is about what you produce and kind of judged in a way, rather than taking things back to their simple processes and just like really enjoying a more simple way of experiencing things. I think that I know for myself, I definitely like long for those sorts of connections with other people, and also like as an individual, like with myself and like with, I guess, natural places, just to slow down and make it a bit more simple and enjoy them for what they are, rather than needing to meet some sort of goal.
Yeah, and I guess that links with something I wanted to talk about as well, in terms of, you know, being a working musician, having another job, a day job, versus, you know, earning your money through just music. I often have met people who have been discouraged, or have felt depressed, or have thought, oh, you know, I'm not a real musician because I'm not selling enough albums, so, you know, it's just a hobby. And you know, so that was a bit of a toxic way to think, because, you know, then it's all about earning money, you know, it's all about money, and music is not really, it's not about money at all. So I wonder, you know, how, I suppose I want to ask, you know, a lot of musicians have these day jobs because, of course, it's particularly tough, especially now, to earn a living only playing music. And I was wondering, how does this affect you?
Yeah, I think my own experience has been, I guess, like as an artist generally, and as a creative person generally, I think fairly recently, probably even within the last like couple of weeks, I've really been thinking about this a lot, and thinking about how I, for such a long time, never really considered myself like a very creative or an artist. I found that kind of the name or the title of artist or musician a very difficult thing to own, and to say like that's what I am.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess there's all kinds of reasons why that can sort of happen, just in terms of growing up in a kind of world where generally like creativity isn't something that's necessarily like widely celebrated. I think in many ways it is, but the arts are often kind of the very first things to sort of be placed to the side when there's difficulties, like in government, or
Yeah.
seen as maybe not having as much value as actually that, like they're the very things that make life very like enriching and just can really help people to
Yeah.
express themselves. And it's like a very uniquely human sort of thing to like make stuff and to create things, and especially music. Like it's such a strange thing when you think about it, that we do and that we're able to do. So yeah, I think for myself, this kind of idea of taking ownership of that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I think in being able to just be a creative person and to be like, I am like an artist, or I am a musician, and not really think about that in terms of the way that society says, yes, you are that or not that, but more the way that you feel that as like an individual, or even that you want that, kind of like that if you speak it, it will become like, I don't know, it'll come into existence or something through some form of magic. But yeah, I think definitely it can be quite a difficult challenge in a world that really celebrates, I guess, what you've produced. It's that same sort of thing, isn't it? Like, what do you have to show to prove that you are something? And I guess the question is like, why should you ever really have to prove that you are something?
Yeah.
Because you can really be anything that you want to be. I guess you're the only one who has to kind of know it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, are you good enough? And this, I think, it's a problem that a lot of people, musicians and non-musicians, have. This idea that we have to prove ourselves, we have to be worthy of love and belonging. We need to deserve things, and how do you deserve it? By what is the standard that measures that worth?
And I think a lot of other professions just maybe don't have that. I mean, it's not that you like go to some sort of dinner party or I don't know, any sort of gathering, and you meet someone and they say to you like, oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm a doctor, and you then question them, like, or I'm not saying that a lot of people question me, but I think maybe there is this maybe inner battle of like feeling that you have to prove yourself in a certain way that maybe other people in some professions don't have the same experience of.
Yeah.
It's like it's maybe just a right to be creative, and maybe that links back to kind of the way that a lot of creativity is seen within society by many people, and in just like subtle ways that it's kind of something that is seemed to be a little less like worthy than some other things.
Well, I suppose it's not a thing that you can measure. Anything that you can't really measure in a capitalist society is not really going to be seen as worthy as something that can be measured. So we go back to that.
Yeah, it's kind of, it doesn't really work within a capitalist society, does it? I think
No, and also the other thing that I often think is about the idea of creativity. Like some people have it, some people don't. If you have it, you're special, and I think there's something wrong with that, because actually, personally, I don't believe that some people aren't creative. I think we're all born creative, but then we are told that we're not good enough, that's not, we can't draw, therefore we're not really creative, or something like that.
I mean, creativity is just is expressing yourself, isn't it? There's all types of different ways of being creative, and you see children being creative from like, I guess from the moment they're born. I mean, maybe not the exact moment they're born, but very early on in their lives, like being creative and playing. I guess creativity in my mind is, like you said, just a kind of a form of play. And I think that dependent on what your experience is, that as an adult, like playing is not something that's really sort of accepted. I mean, being a little bit silly, being playful, there is this kind of idea of like when you grow up, that's not really something that you do anymore, because you do, I don't know, more serious things. And not everybody has this experience. It's like, it's different for everyone, but I think yeah, it is a shame if somebody thinks that they're not creative, because literally it's creative just to live, you know, to make different decisions and like go different places, and to make anything is like an act of creativity. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could be creative and making a meal, you know, and doing gardening, you know, whatever it may be. And I think it's more about, you know, when you are crafting a song or writing, you know, say you write a book, you have those two moments. First comes the play, so the exploration of what could be, and that needs to be free and doesn't need to be attached to any outcome. And then you have the second part, which is more about the editing, the crafting, the eliminating, you know. And I think a lot of people get stuck on the judgment that is required for that second part, because of course you need to be analytical in that second part and judge what's not working so well and what is working. But they then jump you know, to that, instead of, you know, looking at the just the playfulness and the joy of simply exploring what is there.
definitely, because I mean, like, in terms of creativity, if your ultimate goal is to, I don't know, create a lovely song, or like I don't know if there's a perfect song, maybe, but you want something that you're proud to show other people and you feel good about, then that's great. But if I know from my own experience, if you start out with this sort of, I guess, ambitious idea of what this thing, this creative being is going to turn into, then you're right, it can just kind of stifle that, because you've got this, you do have that voice of kind of judgment, telling you the way that it should be, or telling you that it's not good enough, or that you should just give up, or like, and you can't really do anything with that. But if you write something, and even if you write the worst thing in the world, I guess, like, you can still have something to work with. You can still edit it, you can still turn it into something else, and make it better. But if you don't have anything to begin with, and you don't get past that initial thing, then you don't really end up with anything that you can kind of polish, I guess.
Yes, and I think it's also related to the idea of ego, you know, like, why are we actually making music? You know, is it for applause? Is it because we want somebody to say, yay, you're great, you're fantastic? Or is it something else? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but it's like, I'm hearing that that's not what it's, where it's at for you. That for you, it's, I'm not sure. Is it perhaps something more spiritual, would you say? Or
Yeah, I guess I don't know where it necessarily comes from. I think music is just something that is so important. It's such like an ephemeral sort of thing that just kind of affects you. But I think that it's maybe about connection. And for me, it's like such an important way of being able to connect with other people in a kind of world that feels like more difficult to connect with people than ever before. For myself, I find that anyway. I think we spend a lot of time working because we need money to pay for our bills and our rent, and so we're tired, and we go home and we don't have as much time to spend with people who we love, or they don't have as much time to spend with us. And I think that for me, music is like a way of really being able to connect with other people and connect through experience and songs. And I think it's just one of those things that I don't really know if I have the kind of answer for what it is that about it that kind of makes it so important. But I mean, I know that singing is definitely something that just makes me feel lighter and better when I participate in it as a sort of medium. So I think, yeah, it's just the love of that is just kind of this ephemeral feeling, I guess, of feeling like it's the right thing to be doing, and feeling, I guess, good about making sounds and making noise and different things like that.
yeah, well, I can certainly relate about the lack of connection and having to work a lot and not having enough time for your friends, for your family, and then being really tired even when you do have the time. So yeah, I'm not sure where that comes from, but I have heard that we are one of the generations that's working the most, in terms of how many hours we spend actually working, and a lot of those hours for a lot of us is also in front of screens, which can be a very strange experience. And I think playing an instrument can bring you back to basics. And so I'm just jumping to something slightly different. I guess I was curious about your relationship with the so-called music industry. Is the music industry something that interests you at all? What part does it play, in your practice?
I guess in terms of trying to gig and tour music and things like that, the music industry, it's sort of a strange sort of thing to think about, I guess. I never really thought for a long time about pursuing music. I think it was more about finding other people to play with and just making the music. But there definitely for me has come a point where I felt it would be just really great to be out there and playing and meeting people and using this medium as a way to really meet other people and to tell stories and to connect. And it's not really a very easy sort of thing, I guess, to have to engage with. I guess I find it difficult because I find the kind of marketing of yourself, the kind of almost branding yourself in a certain way, a very odd experience to have, and also sometimes struggle, I guess, with the judgment of others, and that's sort of what we were talking before about feeling like you have to prove yourself. And I guess in terms of working in the music industry, you have to have a lot of online content, you have to have things that you've released, you have to really have a lot of a significant online presence in order to convince people to hire you, which I guess makes sense, but I'm not so good at that sort of self-marketing sort of thing. So I think my plan had been I went back to Australia for 4 months over the winter here, and I was going to come back, and I was playing in a band last year with my friend Nikki, Weird Cousins, and Nikki's from Australia as well, so she decided to move back in September last year, just after we released our EP, which is not great timing, but I guess in terms of the journey that we went on together, it was quite well bookended in terms of releasing the EP and finishing that time and then moving on. But it was definitely a sort of weird time for me to sort of find my feet and be on my own and go, okay, well, I guess I just do this on my own now. And just finding the kind of the way that I had to market myself was a little bit different, and it was difficult obviously to use something from a band when you're not in that band anymore. You're trying to market yourself as a solo act. It has been an interesting time. And then to sort of come back to Edinburgh, I just literally came back 2 weeks before lockdown started, so it wasn't really the right time to be meeting other people to start a new band, or even a particularly good time, I guess, to be playing gigs. It's not really kind of possible, and the things that I had planned had were cancelled, like so many other people. So I think it's been an interesting time to think about how I maybe want to play music and how I want to engage with the kind of industry of working in music. And I think it just it gets so hard for so many people, and I think really it's just maybe how badly you I don't know. I think lots of people can want it badly, and it can still be a difficult sort of thing to engage with, because it does kind of go against those natural the natural ways that you play music and you engage with people and you tell stories. It sort of takes it down a different avenue in terms of making yourself a kind of business or having to promote yourself in a certain way.
Yeah. But do you feel that it interferes the having to market yourself, do you feel it interferes with the authenticity of the music? I found it myself a difficult thing to do for many years. I struggled with this idea of marketing myself. Really, I didn't, and then I ended up thinking, well, oh, why am I not super famous? It's like, I'm not super famous because I didn't do any marketing. And it's like, well, oh, do I want to do marketing? How does that feel real? Does that how to do this in an authentic way? How do you deal with that?
I think my way of dealing with it has been probably to not engage with it, and then probably suffer the sort of effects of not gigging as much as I probably would like to, or maybe not having as many opportunities. But I think that sort of question of authenticity and the way that you stay kind of true to what it is you want to do is, I guess, like sometimes a difficult line to walk. I sort of feel, I guess maybe it's just the price you have to pay, if that's what we want to do. That's kind of the story of the way that it is for the industry. And I think, unfortunately, it is just kind of the case that there are these sort of strategies, aren't they, in terms of the way you market yourself, or you have an Instagram page, or
you
the way
present.
you promote yourself. And there are some people who are really good at that, or some people who have enough money to pay somebody else to do it for them, who are really good at it. And I think in terms of what we're presented as the kind of success of the music industry, to me, is not necessarily the people who I want to be listening to, because maybe, I mean, there's great music out there and people are doing it everywhere, and it's awesome. It's awesome how many people play, and how the internet has allowed us to sort of share in a completely different way, and to give, I guess, a lot more opportunity to people as well, to be able to upload music, to share their music and their thoughts and their craft. And but I think in terms of what the music industry maybe represents to me, when I hear that word and I think of kind of big names and things like that, that's not really kind of the music I necessarily listen to.
Right. And so for you, if you had to define what success means to you, how would you define it, just for yourself?
I guess probably just being happy and feeling like you have a way to express yourself. And I think it is an interesting sort of question, this idea of success. And I think that probably it's something that's transitioning in my brain in a different way, because there's all kinds of small successes that it's good to give yourself credit for, in terms of the way that you're brave in moments, or even writing a song is a success. Like you sat down and you gave enough time to that moment and you made something. So I think really success for me is probably about authenticity and being true to whatever I feel like I should be making in a particular time, and less about how much I got paid,
Absolutely.
More about kind of the people I was able to meet and share music with, and the joy that I got from that. So it's really more about joy and happiness for me, definitely.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think this is a very good way of looking at it, and it's positive and it's uplifting. So I would like our listeners to listen to your beautiful voice and your music now. So just before we play the song Bright Star today, do you just want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a newer song. I wrote it when I was about like the end of last year, which doesn't feel like that long ago, but you think like it's August now. I think this time has moved in a very strange way this year, so it doesn't feel like a very old song. But I guess it's the kind of song where it's about thinking about a moment or a time that you've had and how maybe like you or somebody else might like view that in the future, and kind of just wondering about someone you've loved. Or yeah, it's I can't really say much more about it than that.
Yeah, it's just probably better to play it.
All right, so this is Bright Star. When you were old and tired in your bones, your stories wrinkled on your skin, will you recall the shape and the fall? Or think of things that might have been. I saw something bright, something so true in your eyes. In the look they once knew. I fancy life is a gentle night that often moves in swift. So take your approach, sew it into my clothes, and I might carry magic on my back. I saw something bright, something so true in your eyes. In the look they once knew. I've known my truth as the bottom of my shoes, but in the dust how I doubt to find love true amidst a tangle of blue. Surely a bright star in my heart.
Really lovely. There's something about the way you play that reminds me, I don't know, of the 70s somehow, folk music. And that's, for me, it's a huge compliment because I just love 70s folk music. So, thank you so much for delighting us with your voice, with your guitar, and, just for being on the show. It's really been lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to have a conversation about music, and yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was my guest, whom I'd like to thank once again for coming to the show. Every week I'll be chatting to fantastic indie performers to uncover what it really takes to be a female independent singer-songwriter in this day and age, and how we can support one another to keep shining our light onto the world through our creative endeavors. So make sure you don't miss out by subscribing to Dare to Be Seen and follow us on socials at tinyurl.com/Dare to Be Seen pod. I've been your host, Elisa Di Napoli, aka Elisa Vulpes. Thank you for listening, and please do rate and review the show. I'd love to hear your thoughts, unless you hate me, in which case you can skip that bit.
that's all for this episode of Dare to be Seen. Join the conversation on facebook.com/groups/Dare to be Seen podcast and help create an empowering community of independent female singer-songwriters who support one another. For show notes, resources, and information on today's episode, visit tinyurl.com/Dare-to-be-seen-pod. And remember to shine your own unique light onto the world. It needs it.